Welcome to Atomic English. Today we're diving right into the news surrounding a really pivotal day for SpaceX. I'm talking about August 24th, 2025, a day when the company had two incredibly different rocket missions on the schedule.
So on one side, you've got the Falcon 9. Think of it as the reliable workhorse. It had a routine, completely flawless launch, delivering critical supplies to the International Space Station. Business as usual, right? But then, on the other side, you have the main event, the high-stakes, super high-risk 10th test flight of Starship. This thing is a totally experimental rocket, and it's designed to completely rewrite the rules of spaceflight. And that contrast right there is really the heart of our story today.
All right, let's zero in on that main event, Starship Flight 10. You know, the flight plan for this mission was just incredibly ambitious. After a pretty thorough review, the FAA, that's the Federal Aviation Administration, gave SpaceX the official green light for an August 24th launch attempt. This really set the stage for a mission that was just jam-packed with high-stakes objectives. And believe me, they planned to pack a lot into a really short window of time. The entire mission, from the moment of liftoff all the way to splashdown, was scheduled to last just a little over an hour. The plan itself involved some seriously complex steps. We're talking about a hot staging separation, a controlled splashdown for the Super Heavy booster in the Gulf of Mexico, and then a whole series of in-space tests for the Starship itself before it made its own splashdown, literally halfway across the world in the Indian Ocean. So yeah, this flight plan was just loaded with critical new objectives. First, SpaceX wanted to test a brand new landing profile for the booster. Then, they were going to attempt to deploy a payload from Starship for the very first time. After that, they'd try to relight one of the Raptor engines while in space. And, maybe the most important goal of all was to gather as much data as possible during a controlled atmospheric reentry. I mean, each one of these things is a massive milestone all on its own. But to really get why this flight was so ambitious, we've got to take a step back and look at what came before it. The news reports make it crystal clear that the path to Flight 10 was, well, let's just say it was paved with some very fiery lessons. The timeline leading up to this point has been challenging, to say the least. Back on May 27th, the vehicle for Flight 9 was completely lost during re-entry. Then, just a few weeks later, on June 18th, the actual ship that was supposed to be used for Flight 10, that was Ship 36, it dramatically exploded during a ground test. Obviously, these events triggered a mandatory investigation, which the FAA finally closed on August 15th, and that's what cleared the way for this next attempt. So, what exactly went wrong on Flight 9? Well, the reports point to something called a diffuser failure. So what's a diffuser? Basically, it's a component inside the fuel tank's pressurization system. Its whole job is to help maintain the tank's integrity as the fuel gets used up. When that part failed, it caused a methane leak, and that's what ultimately led to the vehicle losing control. Now, the ground explosion of Ship 36 was a completely different issue. The investigation for that one pointed to a COPV failure. A COPV stands for Composite Overwrapped Pressure Vessel, which is really just a fancy way of saying a very strong, high-pressure tank used to store gases. The investigation concluded that some kind of undetectable damage to one of these tanks led to a structural failure, and boom, the whole thing exploded. Okay, so in response to these failures, SpaceX put a series of very specific engineering fixes in place. They went in and completely redesigned that diffuser component to make it much more robust. They beefed up their inspection and testing procedures for all the COPVs, And they even decided to operate those tanks at lower pressures just to reduce the risk. All of this, though, brings us to a much bigger question. With all these fiery, expensive challenges, why is this rocket so important? Right. So, after seeing all those setbacks, you really have to wonder, why is SpaceX pushing this hard with Starship? What is it about this rocket that makes it such a potential game changer? Well, the answer really boils down to two things: its revolutionary scale and its incredible capability. I mean, just take a look at how Starship stacks up against SpaceX's other rockets. It's not just that it towers over the Falcon 9 in sheer height, though it definitely does that. The real game-changing differences are its massive payload capacity and its design for complete, total reusability. Those two factors, working together, are what set it apart from basically every rocket that has ever come before.
And here's the number you really need to remember: over 100 tons. Starship is being designed to lift more than 4 times the cargo of a Falcon 9. But the real revolution here isn't just about lifting a huge amount of weight. It's the plan to do it with a vehicle that is completely and rapidly reusable. That's the part that changes everything.
If they can pull this off, this incredible capability could cause the cost of getting to space to just plummet. We're talking about unlocking missions that, until now, have pretty much been science fiction. Things like deploying hundreds of satellites all at once, serving as the actual lunar lander for NASA's Artemis missions back to the moon, and of course, enabling that huge, long-term vision of building infrastructure for a permanent moon base and eventually a city on Mars. Okay, so with all that context, let's jump back to August 24th and see how this whole day played out. We're returning to our tale of two rockets and the really dramatic conclusion to a day that was just filled with anticipation. So, the day actually started off perfectly. In the wee hours of the morning at 2:45 a.m., a Falcon 9 had a completely flawless launch. It sent over 5,000 pounds of critical cargo on the CRS-33 mission up to the International Space Station. You know, just another routine success for that reliable workhorse rocket. But as the day went on and evening approached, all eyes turned south to Starbase, Texas. The entire world, it seemed, was watching and waiting for the main event, that high-stakes test flight of Starship. The launch window was all set to open at 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time, and as that clock ticked down, the final countdown began, and you could feel the suspense building all around the globe. And then, with just 17 minutes left before the window even opened, came the big twist. SpaceX posted an official announcement. It said, standing down from today's 10th flight of Starship to allow time to troubleshoot an issue with ground systems. Just like that, the launch was scrubbed. So, does that mean it was a failure? Well, not necessarily. To really understand why, we have to look at the whole philosophy behind how Starship is being developed. It's a philosophy that completely reframes a last-minute cancellation not as a failure, but as an integral part of the process. You see, at the very heart of the Starship program is a strategy called iterative development. The core idea is pretty simple. You build, you test, and you learn from your failures as quickly as you possibly can, all to accelerate progress. It's a philosophy that could summarize a lot as fly, fail, fix, fly again. So a scrub to fix a ground system issue? That's a perfect example of this philosophy in action. After all, finding a problem on the ground is way better than discovering it in the air. And this aggressive testing approach isn't just something SpaceX is doing on their own, it's recognized and supported by their key partners. For instance, after a previous test, NASA Administrator Bill Nelson said this, quote, "Spaceflight is not easy. It's anything but routine. That's why these tests are so important, each one bringing us closer on our path to the moon and on to Mars." His words really highlight that this whole process, including the delays and the scrubs, is totally expected. So really, the most crucial takeaway here is this. The whole point of these events is to learn. Every single test, it doesn't matter if it ends with a spectacular launch or a last-minute scrub, provides absolutely crucial data. Each and every attempt is a genuine step forward toward making Starship a fully operational rocket. When you think about it, the story of Flight 10, with its dramatic last-minute cancellation, isn't just about one rocket. It's really a test of a whole new philosophy for how we reach for the stars. And that leaves us all with one final, really big question to ponder. If this new, faster, more aggressive approach to building rockets actually works, what will humanity's next giant leap be? Thanks for watching Atomic English. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a like and leave a comment to practice your English. Don't forget to share it with your friends and subscribe so you never miss a new video. See you next time.